Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This episode, we are sticking with the time period that the two of us tend to gravitate towards and seem to enjoy more than most other time periods. And that is the mid-'80s. And we're talking about probably what I would assume was the most controversial movie of 1984, and that is Silent Night, Deadly Night. And I wonder if this movie beat out Freddy as being like the most controversial movie of the year.
Well, Freddy definitely had more mainstream success than this one. Yeah, this was one of those movies that was quite controversial. People hated this film. Actually, I remember as a kid, my mom telling me about, oh, there's this, you're never going to believe it, there's this movie out now that's about, it's a horror movie, and it's about a killer who dresses up like Santa Claus and kills people. And it was like a really big deal. And I remember thinking about that, oh, really? Huh. As a kid, always gravitating towards the horror section of the movie theater. Didn't take long to figure out which one it was, just based on the box art. This was one that was it was in one of those big the big box VHS cases that we talk about every once in a while.
I don't remember this when it first came out, or even hearing about it at all, just because of the fact, I was 8. I do remember seeing that box a lot of the times at the movie theater, or not at the movie theater, seeing the box at the video store. And the first time that I saw this movie actually was the summer between 7th and 8th grade. I went and stayed with my grandparents for, I think, the whole summer, or maybe just most of the summer. My grandfather had just retired and my grandmother was still working, so it was me and my grandpa hanging out a lot. We actually used to go to the bar, or as they all referred to it, as the tavern.
Holy crap, really? It's in 7th grade?
Down the street for lunch every day. And
okay.
I wouldn't drink, but this was one of those places. It was my grandparents lived out in the country. We'd go to this tavern down the road a bit. It was like 2-3 miles away. You would go in there and everybody was drinking like Old Style and Pabst, and I think Busch was the other big one that was like on tap. And
oh wow!
I don't know if you've ever been to one of these like old person bars or whatever, but like all these guys are drinking these little shorty 8-ounce beers in like
okay.
whatever they call them, like a pull or something. I don't know what they were calling them, but in that way, they could. They'd be like, oh, it's just 8 ounces of beer. Well, it's just a half a beer. But they would,
just kind of, they nurse it really slowly, huh?
No, they wouldn't nurse it at all. These guys are pounding these beers. And the other thing, too, is like, because I remember, too, that my grandpa was always telling me, because he would always tell me, too, he was like, yeah, see those guys over there? See how ugly they are? That's because they drink whiskey all the time. And, you have these guys that are just pounding whiskey all day. But, we would do that, and then we would go into this other little town that was kind of close by them, because like I said, they lived out in the middle of nowhere. But it was one of these places that it was like a grocery store with a gas pump outside kind of thing. Like a really big convenience store, not really a grocery store. But they had a wall of videotapes. And we'd go in there a couple times a week, and hey, Pops, can I get a movie? Yeah. And same thing with magazines. Hey, can I get a magazine? Sure. So I'd grab like a Mad magazine, and then I'd grab like a Playboy, and I'd put it behind the Mad magazine, and then when we'd check out, because he wasn't looking, so the lady would ding ding, bring them both up. But
really?
Yeah.
You were getting Playboys through your grandpa like that?
Oh yeah. This was the same grandpa that when a couple years later, when we were all smoking, because he was a smoker, he would tell all the other grandkids, what was it, $2 a pack or $3 a pack? Like, you take a pack out of his carton and you throw a couple dollars in there. But me and my brother, he was like, the carton's under the wherever. And then we would just go take a pack out if we needed cigarettes. When we were like 16 years old, he didn't care.
That's funny.
But
wow,
Silent Night, Deadly Night was one of those movies that I've always been like, well, my mom wouldn't let me rent this. Even though my mom, we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre together, like in 6th grade and stuff. But, it was, like you said, it was just kind of that subject was just kind of a little bit too taboo to breach with your mom. But, I picked it up and threw it up on the counter, and guy, rang it up, and then we'd go back to the farm and we'd do whatever we were doing. And then I'd go into the one room and my grandpa would be in the living room watching whatever TV show he watched in the afternoon. I think it was back then, I think it was Phil Donahue was who he watched. And another tidbit of trivia about my grandpa was he liked his soap operas too. So he would watch like soap operas in the afternoon. But,
gee.
But the other room, they had a VCR hooked up to this little like 13-inch TV, and I'd throw a movie on in there and watch it in the afternoon. And
was this in like the summertime?
Yeah. Yep. And,
so you'd stay there for like a few days or a week or something in the summer?
Well, this summer I was there for like almost the whole summer, I think.
Oh wow. Okay.
But yeah,
so
I watched.
You got to see all your favorite slasher films that your mom didn't let you see, and get your cigarettes and Playboys.
It was.
That sounds like a great summer.
The selection at this little gas station thing was a little limited, so it wasn't like I had the pick of the litter when it came to movies. It was a few of them, but I do remember seeing like 2 or 3 of these Silent Night, Deadly Night movies that summer, and just thinking they were great.
Yeah, that's funny because Silent Night, Deadly Night was one of those movies. Let's going back to the old mom and pop video store. There were these. Okay, there was the horror movies like Halloween and the Friday the 13th franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street, all those ones that we all knew about and everybody was seeing, and and then there were these more obscure things that you never really heard much about, kind of like Silent Night, Deadly Night. And those were those horror movies where, they were in the horror section, and they were very taboo, and there was no way in hell, I'd be able to rent those, and bring those home. I remember, really wanting to see everything as a kid. Then in high school, I kind of gravitated away from it, didn't really think about it as much towards the end of high school. But then, right when I moved out on my own, I was all of a sudden, it was like, you know what? I really want to see all of those movies that are on the shelf that always kind of as a kid caught my eye, the box art that I never saw. And I remember that year, I was 19, I had my own apartment, and I was just going to the video store and just grabbing all of the, all those video nasties. I mean, I Spit on Your Grave, Silent Night, Deadly Night, all kinds of weird titles that just, I remember I had no idea what they were about, but I just was like, I got to see this, And then I remember Silent Night, Deadly Night. I rented I only saw it other than this, actually today when I saw it to review for our show. I've only seen it one other time. So yeah, just to get it under my belt to be like, okay, yeah, okay. I remember, there was a kind of a deal. It was sort of a big deal back when we were kids, and obviously the box art was a big deal, and so I finally saw it.
It's funny because this was such a big deal back in '84, so 32 years ago. And now when you watch it and you're like, it's not really that big of a deal. I mean, it's a heck of a lot tamer than what's on TV anymore.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah, it doesn't, it's not quite as shocking.
Not at all.
I mean, that show Hannibal. I don't know if you watched that show Hannibal at all. We watched a few episodes of that not too long ago. Started watching it, and there's a lot of sick stuff in that. Yeah, that would make Silent Night, Deadly Night look like a kiddie show, but at the same time, you got to think back at 1984 and kind of the exploitation angle that this movie was going for.
I watched the uncensored version of this movie when I watched it the most recent time, and I've seen that one a couple other times, that same version. And even that version of it is probably less gory than some of the stuff that makes it onto, now granted, like cable television, but Hannibal wasn't on cable television though. Wasn't that on a regular channel? Wasn't that on CBS or something?
I don't remember. I watched it on Netflix, so I don't recall where it originated from.
I know the opening scene or whatever it was to the latest season of Walking Dead, where a couple of the characters get their heads bashed in with a bat. I mean, I haven't seen the episode itself, but I've seen pictures of the makeup and stuff. I mean, that's more gruesome than anything was even in the uncensored version of this movie. So,
oh yeah. I mean, the Walking Dead. I mean, my goodness. That's the one thing I think we talked about in our last episode is during Fear Fest every October. You know, they play all the classic horror movies, and then they cut out all the gore from those movies, and it's like, why would you edit a Friday the 13th movie? After that, play Walking Dead, which is like 100 times more gory than all of them combined.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
This is a very strange film. This is a slasher horror flick, by the way. I mean, I'm sure all the horror fans know that, but this is one of those movies that was kind of following on the coattails of Halloween. You know, clearly trying to find a holiday, and okay, we got a holiday, we got a slasher, we got that kind of setup, and that's what we're going to do, and we're going to make some money off of that. So this movie is very similar to a lot of the movies that were coming out in the early 80s, like My Bloody Valentine, Graduation Day, Happy Birthday to Me. You know, basically, let's find a holiday and let's have a slasher killer going around and killing people. The story is about a little kid and his parents, and it's kind of a funky opening, but they go to a mental institution to go visit Grandpa. That whole scene was very strange and very, very bizarre. But anyhow, so they go visit Grandpa, who looks like he's in a catatonic state in a wheelchair, and he can't say anything. And then the parents leave, and then they leave their 5-year-old son next to the grandpa. And then when they leave, he kind of comes alive and basically tells the kid Christmas Eve is the scariest time in the world, you know, in the year, and Santa not only does he give you presents, but if you weren't good this year, he's gonna punish you, and it just flips the kid out. And then the parents come back, and he's acting like he's catatonic again. So I'm not sure whether or not he was that was a little him just going crazy, or what the scoop of that scene was, but it was a very bizarre little intro there. What do you think?
That opening with the grandpa is just kind of weird, because as soon as those parents walk out, he's just this normal guy, and he gets all Santa Claus is coming to get you if you was naughty. And I don't know if that's one of those things, it was kind of an afterthought, or I don't know. It was, but that opening kind of played into the rest of the movie. You know, you had Billy, who was the main character, which is kind of funny. This has been the second or third movie in a row where Billy is the main character.
Oh, really?
Well, we had Dead Silence and the doll Billy in that one.
Ah, that's right. Okay. Wow, that's funny.
And then as Billy progresses throughout the movie, he sort of reverts back to that, or doesn't revert back to that, but kind of uses that. It kind of becomes his catchphrase. You know, he kind of gets towards the end of the movie where he's just spouting it off, and he's just naughty, naughty.
Yeah, kind of strange. So they're driving home from Grandpa's mental institution. It's Christmas Eve, and meanwhile, there's a guy dressed in a Santa suit who decides to rob a gas station. And so he kills the gas station attendant, takes off with $31 or something like that.
Yeah, something.
And drives off. And anyhow, so they're driving down the road, and the Santa Claus / robber, whatever you want to say, is in the middle of the road with his car, and he's kind of flagging them down, saying, "Hey, can you stop? You know, I've got a flat tire," or whatever. And then the little kid's freaking out, thinking "Oh crap, you know, that's Grandpa warned me about Santa Claus. I don't think we should stop." And the parents stop, and it ends up that Santa just wants to steal their car. So he kills the dad, he shoots the dad, and then he pulls the mom out and rapes her and then stabs her. And then the little kid kind of runs off into the woods and watches all of this kind of transpire. And so he's like, you get the idea that he's basically being mentally programmed to go to the dark side with anything related to Santa Claus after witnessing that. And then we find out that him and his brother have been taken to this like Catholic orphanage, and which is probably the craziest, most wacky orphanage I've ever seen in a movie. With I don't know, like the Mother Superior, and then I don't know where you want to go with that, but we can basically, like, he's Mother Superior, basically an old nun, is beating him and messing with his head even more, and then he like looks in a keyhole in one scene, and then he sees one of the nuns having sex with I don't know who, and then he gets beat for seeing that, and then anyhow he does have a nun that like kind of like sympathizes with him and like sees his good side and wants to help him. And actually she kind of reminds me of, she's kind of like the Dr. Loomis character in this movie. I mean, I guess it's different in the sense that Dr. Loomis was trying to stop Michael, knew that Michael was evil and all that, and this nun is kind of more sympathetic than Dr. Loomis, but she's also kind of the one that throughout the film is going to be like kind of seeking him and hunting him down and all of that. And so he's like probably his late teens, early 20s. She gets him a job at a toy store. He leaves the orphanage and then starts working at a toy store. And one of the coolest things about the toy store, me being a vintage Star Wars collector, there's a scene, if you watch it carefully, where you see the vintage Kenner Star Wars Jabba's palace in the background. So that was kind of cool.
That was one of the notes I had from the movie the other day when I watched it. I was like, oh, I got to make sure I mention that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I never
cool.
really understood if that was it like a toy store, or was it a hardware store, or...
I thought it was a toy store.
Yeah, see, I just, it was one of those things, last time I even watched it, I was like, what kind of store is this? It seems kind of weird. And then, he gets that job there, and Santa calls in sick or whatever it was, and so then they have to get Billy to dress up as Santa. That's when all hell breaks loose. There's that one scene where he smashes the one guy's head in with the claw of the hammer, and that was one of the cooler scenes in the movie too, because he smashes his head in, and there's like chunks of skull like spray on the boxes in the warehouse or wherever they were at. But then there's another thing too where this is a normal guy. They're trying to rip off some of these other horror movies. He's a normal guy, and then he somehow strangles a guy with Christmas lights and manages to pick him up off the ground with one arm.
I think the scene that like really stuck out the most to me, and I think is probably the most infamous scene of this, is when he impales the topless girl on the antlers.
Oh, right. That in itself is another whole cliche of the being from the 1980s, because that was one of the things I noticed in this movie. It seemed like every girl that was between the age of 30 and 18, if she had a scene in the movie, her boobs are going to be shown at one point. Didn't matter who they were.
Yeah, there was a lot of boobies in this movie.
There was, like you had said too at the very beginning of the movie.
And I almost think too that there was a song called "Christmas Boobies" being played. I don't know if you caught that. I think it was in the toy store, in that really pathetic like little party that they had when it was like 7:00, time to close the doors and lock the doors, and like the manager like pulls out the bottle of spirits, and he's like, okay, we're gonna party hard, and like basically it's like just a couple employees and them singing like really terrible Christmas songs.
Mr. Sims.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
But the scene towards the beginning of the movie when they pull over and stop to help Santa Claus. Even that scene, like, he kills the dad and then he pulls the mom out of the car or whatever, or she's trying to get away. And then he, like, flips her open, and he didn't rape her. He just, like, ripped her shirt open and then cut her throat. So I don't...
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
so it was like... I mean, he didn't do anything. It was like, oh, boobs! And then slit her throat.
Oh, okay.
But that was in every movie back in those days. I mean... You know, it's kind of funny the rating board wouldn't let him get away with gore, but yeah, you can have as many boobs as you want. We don't care.
Yeah, another funny death scene in this movie I thought was pretty hysterical was the sledding scene. Okay, I mean, it's one thing like, okay, let's do the sledding scene with the beheading, which was kind of cool, you know, like the concept of that. But, okay, so a couple of adults are sledding, and then a couple more adults come over to them and are like kind of bullying them and like saying like, hey, you know, hey, nice sleds, you know, and kind of like I don't know, one guy puts one guy in the headlock, and he ends up like kind of like scaring the other guys, and they like leave. And then so it's like, I don't know, these guys must have been like in their late 20s, early 30s, and they wanted to go sledding. That whole scene was very bizarre to me. And then so anyhow, like the one guy goes down the hill, and of course the Santa slasher guy comes out with the double-bladed axe and decapitates him, which was kind of a cool like horror, pretty common slasher film death scene. Kind of reminded me of Friday the 13th Part 5 when Junior gets it, you know, when he's driving around in his dirt bike and he gets beheaded.
Yep. So here's a little bit of interesting information about this movie, which I did not realize until just now. So this movie was released on November 9th, 1984, which happened to be the same day that A Nightmare on Elm Street was released.
No way.
Yep. And it turns out this movie, on the opening weekend, outgrossed A Nightmare on Elm Street and then was actually pulled from theaters.
Yeah, it was pulled really quickly, too, wasn't it? It was like it was only in theaters for like a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't in there for very long. It grossed almost $2.5 million. Supposedly it was re-released a couple of years ago in theaters again, but I mean, everybody does that anymore. I know me and you've seen Halloween in the movie theaters, 2-3 times now?
Yeah, you know, the funny thing too, it's kind of interesting because A Nightmare on Elm Street, and yeah, you know, now thinking back, yeah, the 1984, that was A Nightmare on Elm Street. I forgot about that. I mean, that is such a far superior film. I mean, that original Elm Street movie, you know, you and I aren't, you know, we talk about this all the time. We're not huge Freddy fans anymore like we used to be as kids. But going back, you know, even now watching that original film, it's such a well done horror movie. You know, Wes Craven really tapped into something with that movie. And I think it kind of shows you, like, you know, the quality of, you know, you get a good script, you get a good director, you get a little bit of an original idea, and you can really do something with a horror movie. And I think that, you know, comparing these two, because this movie, you know, it's kind of funny because watching it again, I remember the first time I watched it like 20 years ago, like it was just kind of like, oh, wow, you know, because it's so dated and, you know, nothing holds up and it's, you know, it is what it is. But watching it again, I actually kind of enjoyed it. And I don't know if I enjoyed it because the movie I watched before it was really terrible and like really kind of made me like, it was like just a bear to get through it. So I think maybe this one just kind of kept me going. Like there was always something going on. But this movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night, is definitely like a B movie. Whereas like you watch A Nightmare on Elm Street and you can see, oh yeah, this is, you know, you get talent involved in a horror movie. You can really put something together here.
I've been watching this movie since like the 7th grade, 8th grade, and I've seen it quite a few times. And I've seen the first 2 sequels after it, Part 2 and Part 3. I don't know if I've seen the other two. There's 5 movies altogether in the original series. I do know that Part 4 and Part 5, even though they're called Silent Night, Deadly Night, they have nothing to do with this storyline at all. And then there was a remake of the movie in 2012, but that is one of those where they just kind of took the name of the movie and a couple of little plot points from the movie and then just ran with it, because the 2012 movie has nothing to do with this storyline, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I just think it just has Santa as a killer, and that's pretty much all it is, if I remember right.
I actually want to see that movie. I think it was, I could be wrong, but I think the people who did Trick or Treat did it, and I know that Malcolm McDowell is in it. Not that I'm a fan of his version of Loomis, but he is kind of a well-known actor. I know you didn't care for what you saw of it. I never checked it out. I would like to kind of give it a view just to kind of just to see what they had. I know that originally it was supposed to be a theatrical release, and then it ended up not going to theaters. Yeah, because I know that the sequels for this franchise, the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise, I haven't followed anything past the first one, and actually, like I said, today was the first time I've seen it in 20 years. But from what I heard, like the second one, I believe, like they just basically, I could be wrong, so I don't like to say this for sure, but from the reviews and the things I've read in the past, like they basically just took 75% of the film is just like flashbacks to the original movie, and then they just maybe 25% of the film was new footage. So it's like one of those movies where they had the name and all that, and they just didn't have the money to film it, so they had to use all that old shots from the original film to kind of put together a story.
I haven't seen it for a long time, but I do know that there was some new stuff in it, because the second one is supposed to be, if you remember, Billy's younger brother, whatever his name was.
Oh, okay.
He is the one who becomes the killer. And so that's where it kind of goes from the first one. It's not the very end of the movie, but there is this scene where they go back to the orphanage. The police do, because they think Billy, who's dressed up as Santa, is going to go back to the orphanage. And it just so happens that the police show up at the same time that the guy who's dressed up as Santa is there to play Santa. And this was one of the things with this movie that, now that I'm a middle-aged adult, when I see it, I'm like, whoa, what the hell is wrong with that? Because these cops just jump out of their car and they're like, there's Santa! And they just blow him away.
Yeah,
no questions asked or no nothing. I mean, it kind of... We actually talked about this on last episode or the episode before when we were talking about Ben Tramer from Halloween 2. It's the same exact thing. They're like, oh, that's the dude right there. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's him? Oh, I don't know, maybe.
That's funny you say that, too, because at the end when Billy gets killed, in reality, okay, so you've got a nun, a whole bunch of kids, and then this guy in a Santa suit about to kill the nun, and a cop comes in there and just fires on this guy. Like, okay, you have to understand, all right, when he's shooting this guy, he's shooting towards the nun and all the kids. There is no way that would happen in real life. You don't fire a gun towards children. I mean, it's unbelievably, watching this movie again, there's a lot of stuff like that where it's just come on.
Welcome to Old Grumpy Men's Movie Reviews, people.
I think that's what it is, man. We're old. We know reality now. We've lived a little longer. We don't, back when we were in 6th grade, we could watch a movie like this and yeah, that's how it's supposed to be, but nowadays we're yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot, but yeah, there's occasionally I'll go back to some of these, even ones like this one, because like I said, I've been watching this one forever, and I do really like this movie, but it's one of those things where you see stuff like that, and you're like, what? Why does that That's not right. Why would that ever happen?
Yeah, I think this movie for me, like, I'm gonna say, like, okay, there's all this, the slashers of the early '80s and the late '70s, and with the whole holiday theme and all that stuff, and obviously Halloween is, my number one. I like this genre. I love My Bloody Valentine. That's another one I really like. I think that's one of my favorites for this era. This movie, I'm gonna have to say that, like, although it kept my interest the entire time I watched it. I have to admit that. It was sort of like a guilty pleasure in a way where, like, watching it, when I watched it again today, it never really leaves you, like, there's no, like, lingering dull scenes. I mean, even as terrible as some of the scenes are, they're still entertaining to some degree. Like, in a whole, like, this is a B movie, horror movie. So in that sense, I did enjoy it, but I will have to do the negative review and give it a thumbs down overall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hate to do that. I didn't want to do it, but I guess when I put, like, movies like Halloween as, like, my standard, or that one, I mean, compared to that, this one doesn't even slightly hold a candle in my opinion, or even Friday the 13th. Going back to the slasher and the day on the calendar, My Bloody Valentine, even, which is kind of more of a towards the B era, like, copycat film. I like that one better than this one as well. So, but I will have to give it a thumbs down. I didn't want to do that, but well, I think the thing for me too, I'm a big guy for, like, I love the monster in my film to be a certain way. So, like, Michael Myers, awesome. Jason, awesome. Freddy, awesome. Even Harry Warden from My Bloody Valentine, cool, kind of interesting character, right? I did not like that this killer, like, we knew so much about him, and he was like, I don't know, you kind of, like, don't know how to, like, is he, like, do you feel bad for him, or do you just kind of go with it, or whatever? And having said that, I will say that probably the scariest and best Christmas-related Santa Claus movie would have to be the skit in Tales from the Crypt with the insane Santa Claus guy. That's probably one of my, and I'm not talking about even the '90s version, which that one's good too, but the old, I think it was '70s, from the '70s TV show. That's my favorite version of an insane Santa Claus.
Well, I will say that I have been a pretty big fan of this movie since, I was a wee lad. Personally, I'm not a particular big fan of Christmas anyway. But over the past couple of years, and this one's been around for a long time, like I said before, 32 years. But this surge in Christmas horror over the past couple of years is been pretty cool. There's a ton of Christmas-related horror now. I mean, we could almost turn December into what we do every October and just have Christmas horror-themed movies the whole month.
That's funny.
I mean, if it keeps going at the rate that it's going now, in another couple of years, there's going to be more Christmas-related horror movies than there are Halloween-related horror movies.
That's actually pretty funny.
But, yeah, I really like this one. I give it 2 big old thumbs up.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
And now I have to go back and listen to what Siskel and Ebert said about it, because now I kind of
Oh, it's pretty funny. Yeah, you'll like it. You'll enjoy that.
All right, guys. So I think that's going to wrap up this episode. So, yeah, we'll be back in a week with maybe another Christmas movie. You never know.
Cool.